Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about how you'll be scored. So I have this narrative checklist that I think will help you in revisions and will also serve kind of as our rubric, which is in D2L. So the first part here, you have the structure, which is the first part of the essay here, or the rubric. And then the second part is really the development. And then at the very end, we have down here just kind of those language and conventions, which we'll talk about. So we're going to go in detail through this just to make sure that you're really clear on what these things mean, and so you know what is expected and how to revise your essay. So overall, we want to look at, I created a narrative with complex characters, right? We want to think about that steel worksheet that we did, and development of tension, change, and themes, right? Our thesis is going to be important for this. And for each one of these, you are going to say over here, yes, starting to, or not yet. So go ahead and check these boxes, and that's going to give you a good starting point on what you need to revise. The next thing you want to look at is that you developed a particular perspective, which of course is going to be your perspective eye, because you're the one writing the story. And then we want to think about our lead, which is our intro, right? The beginning that defines a situation, a place, an atmosphere, giving some context, the significance of kind of the issue, or again, going back to that kind of theme of the story. So this is going to be a little bit of that kind of introduction, the background. The beginning also is going to introduce particular narrative voice, right? And a point of view, kind of where you are coming from in this moment that you're writing about. Then we want to use transitional phrases, right, to alert the reader with the passage of time, which is important. We don't want, 3 days of nothing happening. We want you to say 3 days later and really get us to the moment. And there's some examples here, and you can also look at our transitions handout from earlier. Then we want to look at that ending, which is your conclusion. So you wrote an ending that develops meaning. Like, why is this important? Why is this connected to us as humans? Perhaps some social commentary on what this tells us about ourselves, what it tells us about our society. And then giving the reader a sense of closure. We talked about beginning the story the same way you ended, that kind of like snake eating its tail phrase, and maybe some subtle character changes, perspectives, problems that may or may not have been solved, and why. And then we want to look at organization. So organization is that story arc that we did, right? Narrative paragraphs, transitional phrases, maybe using font changes or spacing in our dialogue, because it is narrative. It's a little bit different than a formal essay. Shifts in setting and mood, all of those will affect your organization. And then you want to think about maybe these nonlinear parts. We talked about that with foreshadowing, or like shifting in time or perspective, that really influence your voice as a writer. The next part is going to be this development. So that was kind of the structure, how things are built, but how you kind of develop the pieces. So these action, dialogue, details, inner thinking, these are all of those techniques, right, that we have been working at. And then details that relate and suggest meaning, right, maybe foreshadow or hint at something. They can be small, subtle details, but ones that really make a big difference. Also, you can develop minor as well as central characters, and your central character is you. But you want to, again, think about the other people in your story and how they are interacting with you and how they really drive that theme home. I develop a sense of place and mood as well as physically, right, using that concrete language to describe an imagery in that moment of what was happening so that we can get a sense of where you were. And then description. So description, notice how important it is, right? Its own little area here. I develop characters over scenes. I let the reader get to know strengths, flaws, of course, hopes, troubles, uncertainties. I show how characters respond to trouble, right? I show that they are complicated, changing, and compelling. We want nice, developed, round characters, dynamic characters that change, because that's what real people do. And because we're writing real stories, it's really unbelievable if a character is too evil or a character is too good. We want to see all the meatiness of the character, because we all have these wonderful sides to us, and we all have kind of these dark sides, and memoir kind of shines a light on that. I may have shown what characters don't know, right? You don't know what's happening, or you're like reflecting and looking back. You know more now, but you didn't know then. And then, of course, vary the tension, develop meaning, and manage time is going to be important, which kind of connects up with that pacing as earlier. Also, I match my language and sentence structure to convey time and place and to develop different characters' voices. So we talked about this with syntax quite a bit, and this is how you can really develop a voice for your characters. And then at the very bottom, I have language and conventions. Please don't stress too much about this. What I'm really asking you to do is run your spell check, read it out loud, look for those typos. I just want you to make sure that you're kind of double checking for those homonyms, those your, which get us every time, the there, and those things. I control conventions and I use them accurately and perhaps artfully to enhance meaning. So this is really what we're looking at overall when you're going to be scored, is how are you kind of making these details. So use this checklist to look over your writing, and then it'll give you a good focus to see what you need to do before you turn in your final draft.